Mananam, Nididhyasanam. Listen, reflect and absorb. Dear listeners, Sai Ram and welcome to our radio series in which a divine discourse by Bhagavan is played in small parts, and following each part a short discussion is undertaken to reflect on the message. This is a part of Radio Sai's Thursday Live, hosted by Sai Prakash and Prem, every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. only on Asia stream of Radio Sai Global Harmony. In this episode, that was first broadcast live on 25th April 2013, Mrs. Fanibanda, a Bal Vikas Guru for more than 4 decades, participated as a guest. The discourses undertaken for study in this program are from the series of discourses delivered by Bhagavan as part of the summer course in Indian Culture and Spirituality, 1990. Today the clips played are continuation from the inaugural discourse delivered by Bhagavan on the morning of 20th May, 1990.
Sai Ram, Sai Prakash.
Sai Ram, Prem.
I take this opportunity on behalf of you and the special guest in our studio to offer our humble pranams at Bhagwan's lotus feet and guide us in this endeavor of ours. Sai Prakash, I would like you to introduce our special guest to our listeners today.
Dear listeners, it's my great privilege and honor to introduce Auntie, Mrs. Fanibanda, who is here with us. Auntie has been a really great inspiration to me, and whenever I have interacted with her, it's always about Swami and so much of love and interest in Swami and his teachings. We are really fortunate to have Auntie here, who has been a Bal Vikas Guru for over 4 decades. Auntie, this is our first endeavor and our first episode with you here. I really hope by Swami's grace we have many more episodes together. And we would really like to discuss with you how to take Swami's message to children, how to take it to Bal Vikas. Because when Swami gives a discourse, it's meant for all in the audience. But there are certain episodes, Chinna Katha Swami narrates, and certain small examples that Swami gives to illustrate a point, which will really catch the attention of youth and of children. We would really like to discuss with you in the coming episodes and even otherwise to try to illustrate some of those, possibly even visually, to bring home the point. So we welcome you on to this episode of Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam.
Thank you, Sai Prakash. Last Thursday I heard the first part, and certainly I didn't think that I would be participating in this second part.
Yes.
But then Swami says life is full of surprises, and he always says be ready. I don't know if I'm ready, but this is a very nice surprise, and it is indeed my privilege and pleasure to be here.
Thank you, ma'am. It's our honor and pleasure to have you here. Auntie, what we've done is, as you've heard the last week's episode, we've taken the 1990 summer course series.
Yes.
The summer course which Swami restarted after a gap of so many years.
Yes.
And the first summer course which was held specially for the university students, for the school students too participated. Before we go on with this program, we would like to ask you your reflections about this series. I'm sure you as a Bal Vikas Guru would have had the opportunity to study this entire series. So we would like to know from you what you think about our selection, if I could say so.
Yes, it's a very good selection. I did it once, all the discourses, in the study circle for elders which we have. We humorously call the study circle, since Bal Vikas is Bal Vikas, we humorously call it Bada Vikas.
Okay.
And because it's very pertinent, because it's pertinent to daily life. We function with the body, senses, mind, buddhi. Therefore, one should know how to function with these instruments in order to achieve the fulfillment of human life. And we are using these instruments all the time. Therefore, it's a very good topic to take because it's so pertinent for life.
very beautifully put, because Auntie is saying these are instruments we are using.
Right.
Then the question I think at the end of the 16 discourses would be, who am I? Because if I am using the instruments of the body, mind, etc., then I think at the end of the discourse series of discourses, Swami really drives home that point.
Yes. Yes.
And the other thing which we can notice even in this discourse, even the small clip which we played only about 15 minutes, how Swami breaks down the most profound of truths. Swami starts by saying that truth is the ultimate. And I'm sure that most people over there would have been boggled by that statement, and it's not very easy to comprehend even for any of us.
Yes.
And then how Swami breaks it down, how Swami brings in Indian culture into that, and how Swami brings in humanness into that aspect. That is so beautiful.
True. Prem, do you think we should summarize the last episode?
Yeah, I'll try to do that. It's just, as I said, a 15-minute clip, but I'll quickly go through the important points that Swami made, because that will help us connect to what is here to follow.
Okay.
As I said, Swami started with the importance of truth. Swami said truth is all important, and that truth is Brahman. So that is the statement with which Swami starts. And then Swami talks about Indians. Indians, Bharatiyas, Swami says. Bharatiyas are those that always foster truth. So Swami is defining Bharatiyas on the basis of truth.
So it's not just being born in India.
Right, it's not being born in India. And then Swami makes a very important point. He says that those who wish to promote universal harmony will have to always pursue and foster truth and righteousness. Then Swami says that is why Indians always fostered for universal harmony. Because they fostered for truth by, you can say by default, they were actually working for universal harmony. And then Swami says, this is about truth, and in the description to truth, Swami says that truth is that which does not submit to anything.
True.
It does not submit to power of any sort, of physical or political or wealth. It is beyond any of these things. And then Swami speaks about connecting humanness with truth. Swami says the essence of a human life is to be human.
Yes.
To call yourself human, you need to be human.
Yes.
And Swami also says that the problem today with modern culture, which is taking us away from this concept of truth and being human, is because it is leading us to external pursuits. What was actually meant for going within is now forcing us to go without. And as I can see here, what Swami says is that pursuit of truth is actually oneness. And in the pursuit of going out, you are trying to become self-centered.
Oh, okay.
Where, from unity, we are looking at diversity and each one grabbing from the lot.
So what you're saying is science and technology that has been developed is, do you think engaging the mind or distracting the mind? What would you say?
Yeah, the Swami actually very clearly says these are all distractions.
Okay.
Which take you away from the inward path.
Mm-hmm.
And Swami says that you can't say that there are no youth who are thinking about the nation. Mm-hmm. But these self-centered youth are going out to protect the nation. That causes a disparity.
Okay.
You have to be established in truth to try, and as Swami made that point, that to protect universal harmony, you need to protect the truth within.
Yes.
Okay.
But Swami is saying that here you're giving out that pursuit of going within and you're trying to protect the country.
So I think he says if you protect Sathya and Dharma, truth and righteousness, that is enough.
Right.
That will protect the country.
And Swami also says that, if you look at past leaders in pre-independent India, these were all people who were striving for nation's prosperity and nation's independence through the pursuit of truth and spirituality.
Yes. Yes.
And they were ideal leaders. And they are the ones who are lacking today. And that has led to generations of youth coming without proper leaders. And I think that is the point where Swami stops. And the last point which Swami made, a very beautiful point, is Swami says, Indian culture always emphasized on 4 purusharthas: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. And Swami says that Dharma is like the head and Moksha is like the feet.
Correct.
Which means Dharma is the guiding light, and the feet, that is the path. The path should lead towards Moksha. Now man has become like without head and without feet.
Mm-hmm.
He's only after Artha and Kama.
I think what Swami said was Dharma, which is like the feet, and Moksha, which is compared to the head.
Okay.
So Dharma is the path that you take, and Moksha is the head.
Okay.
So he said we should follow Dharma and moksha, but people are following only kama and artha.
Right. So it is like a body with no head and no feet and only the torso.
Correct.
The dharma has to be linked to artha and dharma.
Right.
And kama and moksha.
Exactly.
Earn wealth, spend wealth righteously. No, it's being, it's in trust.
Yes.
Neither do you bring it, neither you take it.
Correct.
So, and the desire.
The desire should be linked to moksha.
Fulfillment of life, yes, for moksha.
Oh, that's very beautiful. And then I think he goes on to say that imitation is human, creation is divine. That came in the context of Bharatiyas trying to ape the West, forgetting their own culture.
Right.
I think he started off with truth, then went on to Bharatiya culture, and then brought in this Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, and then said, we should not imitate. We should stick to our own truth. So I think let us go to the next part of Swami's discourse. Sure. What is your plan? You think?
There are clips of 10 minutes each.
Okay.
So maybe we'll listen to the 10 minutes.
Okay.
And then we'll try how we can reflect upon it.
Okay, sure.
గడిచిన 50 సంవత్సరములకు పూర్వము 50 years ago యువతి యువకులు దేశాభిమానం కలిగి సంస్కృతి అభిమానం చేత వారి యొక్క జీవిత జాడలను సరైన మార్గంలో అనుసరిస్తూ వచ్చారు. Boys and girls were following and having patriotism and love of their own culture. Therefore they were always on the right path. ఆనాటి దేశ నాయకులు, గురువులు, పండితులు ఆదర్శ పురుషులుగా రూపొందుతూ వచ్చారు. The leaders of those days, the parents, the teachers, they were all exemplary. వారి మాట, ఆచరణ ఏకంగా గావిస్తూ వచ్చారు. There was unity between their word and thought. త్రికరణ శుద్ధితో కార్యమును ఆచరిస్తూ వచ్చారు. They always conducted themselves with the purity of the three. అందువలనే యువతి యువకులు వారిని అనుసరిస్తూ వారి అడుగుజాడల్లో నడుస్తూ వచ్చారు. That was the reason why the youth implicitly followed the leaders and always were on the right path. ఆనాటి యువతి యువకుల యొక్క గదుల యందు ఆదర్శవంతులైనటువంటి యొక్క నాయకుల యొక్క చిత్రములు, పవిత్రమైనటువంటి యొక్క అవతార తత్వములు చక్కగా వారు ఆరాధిస్తూ దానివల్ల ఆదర్శవంతమైన జీవితాన్ని అనుభవిస్తూ వచ్చారు. The youth of those days used to decorate in their rooms the great leaders and the avatara purushas and always worshipped them, followed the right path. ఈనాటి ఆదర్శవంతమైనటువంటి యొక్క గురువులు కానీ ఆదర్శవంతమైనటువంటి యొక్క నాయకులు కానీ కనిపించటం లేదు. Today we cannot come across such exemplary and ideal leaders or teachers. వారు చెప్పునది ఒక్కటి, చేయనిది మరొకటి. They tell something and do the opposite. అందువలననే ఈ యువతి యువకుల యొక్క విశ్వాసములు క్రమక్రమేణా దిగజారుతూ వచ్చింది. That is the reason why the youth have lost confidence in elders. ఈనాడు యువతి యువకుల యొక్క గదుల యందు తమ ఆరాధన దేవతలు కేవలము ఒక సినిమా లీడర్స్ గా తీసుకుంటూ వచ్చారు. Today in the rooms of the youth you can find the cinema actors photos as their great idols. ఈ విధంగా యువతి యువకుల యొక్క బుద్ధులు దిగజారిపోవడానికి కారణం ఏమిటి? What is the reason for this kind of degeneration in the minds of students? కేవలము భారతీయ సంస్కృతి యందు సరియైన విశ్వాసమును కలిగి సరియైనటువంటి ప్రబోధనలు చేసేటువంటి నాయకులు లేకపోవటమే కారణం. The reason is that there is lack of leaders who have firm faith in Indian culture and who have been practicing that Indian culture. భారతీయ యొక్క సంస్కృతి, Indian culture, వేష భాషలు ఎందే కాక, not merely restricted to ఆచార విచారములు ఎందే కాక, and not also merely అడుగడుగున కూడాను తెల్లవారి మొదలు రాత్రి వరకు కూడాను మనకు కనిపించేటువంటిదంతా కూడాను భారతీయ సంస్కృతి. Whatever you come across in the daily routine from the dawn to the dusk is full of Indian culture. సంస్కృతి అంటే ఏమిటో గుర్తించలేనటువంటి వ్యక్తులు అనేక మంది ఉంటున్నారు ఈనాడు భారతదేశం నందు. In today's India, there are innumerable number of people who do not know the meaning of Indian culture. ఈ యొక్క సంస్కృతియే లేకుండా మానవ జీవితమే లేదు. If there is no culture, there is no human life whatsoever. This is the way of life. It is a way of life. ఈ విధమైనటువంటి మార్గమనే మనము ధిక్కరించి పెడమార్గమును అనుసరిస్తూ మనము శాంతి భద్రత దూరం అయిపోతున్నాము. As we are giving up the way of life itself, we are going on the wrong path and we are losing both safety and also peace. సుఖము 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 సుఖమనేటువంటి దానిని ఆశిస్తూ వస్తున్నారు. Every person is aspiring to have happiness, happiness and happiness. Comfort.
ఈ సుఖం అంటే ఏమిటో అనేటువంటిది కూడా వారు గుర్తించుకోవడానికి ప్రయత్నించడం లేదు.
They have not been able to recognize the real meaning of comfort.
దినములకు 4 పర్యాయములు భుజించటము,
Eating 4 times a day,
చక్కగా నిద్రించటము,
sleeping comfortably,
3 పర్యాయంలో 4 పర్యాయంలో టెలివిజన్ లేక సినిమాలో చూడటము,
seeing 3 or 4 times either the cinemas or the television,
ప్రపంచాన్ని మరిచి ఉండటము సుఖంగా భావిస్తున్నారు.
forgetting the world is considered to be
తినటము,
comfort.
త్రాగటము, నిద్రించడము, ప్రపంచాన్ని మర్చటము మానవుడిగా పుట్టవలసి వచ్చిందా?
Is it necessary to be born as a human being to eat, drink, sleep and waste one's time?
పశు మృగాదులు కూడా తినటం లేదా, నిద్రించటం లేదా, ప్రపంచాన్ని మర్చటం లేదా?
Are not animals, birds and beasts sleeping, eating,
ఇంత
drinking?
మాత్రానికి మానవుడిగా జన్మించవలసిన అవసరం ఏమిటి?
For the sake of this, should a person be born as a human being at all?
జంతువునాం నరజన్మ దుర్లభం.
It is rare to get a human life.
అట్టి ఉత్తమమైనటువంటి యొక్క మానవత్వాన్ని ఈనాడు మర్చిపోతున్నాం.
We are forgetting such sacred nature of human life.
కనుకనే మన యొక్క సంస్కృతి ఏమిటో వారు గుర్తించడానికి ఏమాత్రం కూడా ప్రయత్నించడం లేకపోతున్నారు.
That is the reason why people are not able to recognize what our Indian true culture is.
భారతీయ సంస్కృతి యందు కేవలం జీవనోపాధి మాత్రమే కాక జీవిత పరమావధి తత్వాన్ని కూడా చక్కగా వర్ణించి వివరించి బోధించినటువంటి యొక్క దివ్యమైనటువంటి యొక్క భావము.
There are extraordinarily divine feelings and ways what relating to the world and achieving the object of the world and object of the other world and the transcendent world in Indian culture.
సంస్కృతి
The one which can be transformed, that is real culture.
ఈ సంస్కృతం నుండి కూడా ఆవిర్భవించినటువంటిది.
The word Samskruti has taken its birth from the root word
ప్రపంచమునందు
Samskrutam.
సహజంగా ఆవిర్భవించినటువంటి ప్రతి పదార్థమును కూడాను సంస్కరించి అనుభవించినటువంటిదే సంస్కృతి.
Samskruti really refers to the process of transforming everything which is raw into a refined thing and enjoying it.
చిన్న ఉదాహరణ,
Here is a small example.
మనం నిత్యము బియ్యమును భుజిస్తున్నాము.
We partake rice every day.
అయితే ఈ భుజించడానికి ఈ స్థాయికి రావడానికి పూర్వం ఎన్ని విధములైన సంస్కారములు పొందింది?
How many types of processes the rice had to undergo before it is
గడ్డితో
useful?
ఉండినటువంటి వడ్లను వేరు చేయటము,
First thing is removing paddy from the grass,
ఆ వడ్ల పైన ఉన్నటువంటి పొట్టును విడదీయటము,
removing the chaff from the grain,
విడదీయబడినటువంటి యొక్క బియ్యమును ఉడకబెట్టటము,
and then the rice itself is being cooked,
ఆ పరిపక్వమైనటువంటి యొక్క పదార్థమును మనం భుజించటము.
and that well cooked rice is being partaken.
ఇన్ని రకములైనటువంటి సంస్కృతి జరగటం చేతనే, సంస్కారములు జరగటం చేతనే మనం భుజించుటకు వీలవుతూ ఉంటుండాలి ఈ బియ్యము.
On account of all these processes of transformation, we have been able to partake rice as food.
సంస్కారం చేత తమ విలువను కూడా పెంచుకుంటున్నాయి.
This kind of samskara or transformation increases the value of
ఒక
things.
మూట వడ్లు ఉంటుంటే ఒక 100 రూపాయలు మాత్రమే ఇవ్వగలము.
If there is a bag of paddy, it might cost about 100
దాన్ని
rupees.
సంస్కరింపజేసి దాని పొట్టును వేరు చేసి సరైనటువంటి యొక్క దృష్టికి అనుభవించడానికి యోగ్యతకు తెప్పించడం చేతనే ఒక్క మూట 600 రూపాయలుగా పెరుగుతుండాలి.
But after it is being processed and made polished rice, etc., it costs 600 rupees per bag.
ఒక్క మూట 100 రూపాయలుగా ఉండినటువంటి వడ్లు ఒక్క మూట బియ్యంగా మారినప్పుడు 600గా పెరగడానికి ఏది కారణం?
What is it that makes a bag of paddy, when it is transformed into rice, from 100 rupees to 600
ఈ
rupees
వడ్లను
value?
సంస్కరించినటువంటి ఫలితమే దీనికి విలువ.
It is on account of the transformation which this paddy
మన
has
చేతి
undergone.
యందు ఒక గడియారం కట్టుకుంటుంటాం.
We wear a watch.
ఈ గడియారం నిప్పులో వేస్తే 2 అణాలు స్టెయిన్లెస్ స్టీల్ కూడా మనకు చిక్కదు.
If you burn it and transform it into stainless steel, its worth is
కానీ
2
ఆ
annas.
గడియారానికి 1000 రూపాయలు ఇచ్చి నువ్వు పొందడానికి ఏది కారణం?
What is it that makes its value 1000 rupees?
సంస్కారమే దీనికి కారణం.
It is this kind of
దీన్ని
processing.
సరైన స్థితిలో మనం అనుభవించేటువంటి యోగ్యతగా తీర్చిదిద్దారు. బోర్డ్స్, నట్స్, స్క్రూస్, పిన్స్, గంటను అన్నింటినీ సక్రమంగా సవరించడం చేతనే ఇది సంస్కారంగా మారింది. ఇదే విలువను పెరగడం.
The processing and the transformation has made the article so very useful. Its value has grown and it is then with 1000 rupees in worth.
ఇదే విధంగానే భారతీయులు ప్రాచీన కాలము నుండి కూడాను ప్రతి పదార్థమును కూడాను
సంస్కరింపచేసి అనుభవిస్తూ వచ్చారు.
Right from ancient days, Bharatiyas used to give this processing and they used to enjoy.
ఇది ఒక వస్త్రము.
Here is a cloth.
అయితే ఇది వస్త్రంగా మారడానికి ఎన్ని రకములైనటువంటి సంస్కారం పొందింది.
How many types of processing and transformation it had to undergo to become
పత్తిగా
cloth?
ఉంటుండి,
First it was cotton,
తదుపరి నూలుగా మారి,
then it became thread,
ఈ నూలు నేయటం చేత
then after it
ఇది
was
ఒక
woven,
వస్త్రంగా తీర్చిదిద్దాం.
then only it has become a cloth.
కనుక ప్రత్తిగానే మనం అనుభవించటం లేదు.
We are not enjoying cloth in the raw
ప్రత్తిని
form.
అనేక విధములుగా సంస్కరింపజేసి తదుపరి దానిని ధరిస్తూ వస్తున్నాము.
We are wearing the clothes after cotton is transformed
అదే
into cloth.
విధమైన మానవుడు పుట్టినటువంటి మానవుడుగానే జీవించటం వ్యర్థము.
In the same way, a man should not remain in the raw state the way that he was born.
మానవాతీతమైన దివ్యత్వంగా మనం తీర్చిదిద్దుకోవాలి.
It is necessary to transform ourselves into divinity.
ఇలాంటి సంస్కారమునకు తగినటువంటి కృషి మనం చెయ్యాలి.
We should undertake to do efforts to become divine.
కనుక విద్యార్థులు ఈనాడు విద్యతో పాటు
Today's students, along with education,
వివేకము,
discrimination,
వివేకంతో పాటు వినయము,
humility,
వినయంతో పాటు విచక్షణ,
and along with that,
ఈ రకమైనటువంటి సంస్కారముల చేతనే మానవత్వం మన పరిపూర్ణత్వాన్ని పొందడానికి వీలవుతుంది.
only with such great good qualities and virtues, humanity can become divinity.
So that's the next 10 minutes of that discourse. And Swami is continuing with that. You could say Swami's complained about the lack of ideals in the society, where Swami is going on to say the most important point I feel Swami is making is you don't have men who have harmony of thoughts, word and deed. We don't lack people who speak good words. I think we lack people who
Yes. Don't translate
that into
yes.
action.
Once Swami had said that the ancients, because they always had this harmony of thought, word and deed, what they spoke had so much power that it would actually take place. And is also saying that the teachers and elders, many times, they don't synchronize their thought, word and deed. When my daughters were small, they were admitted in the upper KG. That was one of the first things which I realized, because we tried to enforce this at home. If we said something, even something small, then we did it so that they would realize, that what you say means the word is valuable. What you say has to be translated into action.
Yes.
So they were enrolled. This was the first day in the upper KG. And the teacher gave some small assignment to the children. And she said if it's not done properly, then the next day she would take them to the principal. So next day when they were to get ready for school, there was a little fear. I don't want to go to school. And so when I inquired, this is what they said. So I said, okay, I will come with you. And, I thought I'll get to the bottom of this. And so I asked the teacher and she said, no, I just said that. Whatever, they don't have to take these things so literally. They are unnecessarily fearful. And, I thought to myself, now this is the first experience that that I'll have to explain that yes, sometimes in the outside world it happens, but we have to know for ourselves what truth is and stick to it. And that was...
people do say things which they don't actually do.
Yes.
So you have to explain that to them.
Right.
Yes.
And to look back, that was one of the first dramas which Swami staged.
Cheppinattu chestaru.
Yes, yes.
And I think quite a similar episode of the teachers not
very
following
true.
what they
Yes.
say.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I think, one more thing which strikes me is this is supposed to be a summer course for students, youth. But Swami is not, shying from addressing the elders.
Yes.
Because he's making a very clear point that, elders are the ones who are inspiring the youth, and also the youth are going to be elders tomorrow, and it becomes, their onus that they don't do the same mistake which probably their elders are doing.
Swami started with truth, and he's speaking the truth here. But one thing which really caught my attention is, he says nowadays the posters are replaced with cinema actors and film stars. But if you think of it, they are acting in the film. That is not even their real life. It's so symbolic in the sense you are going behind somebody, not even knowing, suppose they are following the film star for his actual life, his conduct, and if they are inspired by it, I think that is fine. But they are going by what they are acting in the cinema, and they are taking that as their ideal. It really sounds very shallow.
Yes.
And I remember once, when we were in our school days, in our 8th standard, I remember very clearly Swami came to the hostel and he was very upset because in those days some students had heard some of the movie songs with a transistor. With a transistor, some students were listening to movie songs. So Swami was very upset with it. And when I think of that, I'm trying to think what Swami was driving at. And I think Swami is trying to say what is the power of the senses. And here he's giving so much importance to what you see. And I have heard Swami saying many times that the sight is very powerful. I mean, you see good, do good, be good. But first is always the sight.
Yes.
In the word Sathya,
Yes,
we can recall Swami breaks it up into Sa, Tha and Ya.
Mm-hmm.
Sa is divine.
Yes, Andy.
Tha stands for tapas.
Okay.
Oh,
Harmony of thought, word and deed.
okay.
And Ya is Yama, or sense control. So the path to truth, the goal and the path to truth, both are contained in the word Sathya.
Sathya.
The true tapas, through conscious effort to practice harmony of thought, word and deed, and sense control, that will reveal the truth or the divinity.
Very beautiful.
Now, talking of Swami emphasizing on the thought being very pure, I'm reminded of one of my seniors shared this with me. They were in Kodaikanal with Swami, and Swami had revealed to them his plan that he wanted to get back to Prashanthi Nilayam to Brindavan before Ishwarama Day starts. So they were trying their best to extend the stay as much as possible so that they could spend more time with Swami. So they came up with this idea that they will put up a drama. Okay, and the drama went by that there is a man who gets caught in the habit of bribing, and there's a strike in the factory which he's running, and the whole thing, and somehow Swami comes into his life. So the last scene of the drama is, he asked I want to go and see Swami. Where can I go and see Swami? So the character who actually introduces Swami to him, he says Swami is actually in Kodaikanal. In fact, Swami is going to spend Ishwarama Day in Kodaikanal. So, we all can go to Kodaikanal and have darshan. So the drama was over and all the students were in front of Swami. And Swami said, yes boys, I got the message. But, very politely Swami said, no, see, I've already given my word. They made all arrangements. But what Swami said after that was very, very beautiful. Swami said, but I'm very pained. Swami said, very pained. And Swami went on to say that the fact that my boys are even thinking about things like bribe, strike, and, violence, that hurts me. I don't even want you to think of such things.
Here Swami says, he explains that how everything is a part of Bharatiya culture.
Not just the clothes and
he says the manner of dressing, speaking, working and playing. And what better example than Swami himself? I mean, in a way, he was the embodiment of culture and the way he conducted, because right from childhood we have been seeing his feet. He would cut the nails so deep so that it won't hurt anybody. And the whole concern for others, that I really think is great culture. There is an episode where in Kodaikanal, because I think Kodaikanal is one of the places where students are sitting inside the mandir when Swami goes out for darshan. And then when he comes back, the students actually are waiting inside the mandir. And Swami would come back from darshan, and then he would go to the bathroom and come back. Then Swami told, see, when I go out, there's a lot of dust that sticks onto my feet. And when I come near you, I don't want you to touch my feet. So first I go and wash my feet and then come out. I mean, he set example at every level. And if just while listening to this, I got reminded of this, how Swami set example at every level.
Very true.
Everything, even the very act of Swami inviting people inside the interview room.
Yes.
Swami would open the door.
Correct.
And Swami would stand in the entrance and ask people to come in.
Like the host.
And when he would, ask them to leave, he would be the first one to come out and he would assure them outside.
Very true.
And I think, when we as students were sitting there, Swami never told us that, look at what I'm doing, you're supposed to do this. But we know that if Swami is doing, that's the best practice. And I think somewhere it's inbuilt in us. And now when we sit and admire Swami and say that what Swami did, and we are able to point out these things and say these are all beautiful culture.
He played the perfect host. Even when he called somebody for interview, if they were not able to sit on the ground, he would make sure there's a chair arranged for them.
Absolutely, yes.
And
In fact, I'm reminded the alumni meet which was held. Swami had invited all the alumni into the Purnachandra Hall. The first batch student was sitting in the very end. And as the session was going on, there was somebody speaking. Swami called Brother Satyajit and told him something. So immediately Satyajit ran till the end of the hall and brought a chair and kept for that person.
Yes.
Because Swami saw that he was struggling to sit down.
Oh.
Okay, and immediately Swami sent a chair for him. And in a crowd like that, I don't think anybody would be noticing things
I
such
think
as
that
that.
sensitivity towards
right.
others.
I think that is a very, very important aspect of culture, sensitivity and care for others.
Here, Swami very beautifully differentiates between comfort and what is real comfort. Going further into what Swami actually spoke, there can be no human life without Samskriti. It is a way of life. And he says that people think eating 4 times a day, sleeping, viewing television is comfort. But I think what Swami is really trying to tell us here is what is true happiness and what is true comfort.
True.
He says that unless you are human and you have to aspire for human happiness. He says, just for eating and sleeping, is it necessary to be born human?
I remember humorously him saying once that the way man goes after food, if he went after God, the way he goes after food.
Okay.
Yes.
That's very true. And of course we know how Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said, are you thinking and pining for God like a man sinking in the ocean?
Yes.
How desperate he is for
air.
Yeah.
Another striking statement Swami makes is, Indian culture is not after objects of life, but the objective of life.
Okay.
That's a very strong point. And we've heard Swami say this many times that Jantunam Narajanma Durlabham, the human life is so sacred. One of my teachers in the university once explained this in a scientific manner. Why is human life so precious? So he said, every organism, every mammal has this process of homeostasis. Happens. A student of biology is here. I think he will be able to explain better. So homeostasis is a process by which the body is kept in an equilibrium temperature, so that all processes in the body go on. So he said, the nearest ancestor of the Homo sapien, the chimpanzee variety which is there, close to 96% of its brain function is used up in maintaining this body temperature, homeostasis. And he said when it comes to human beings, it's like 4 or 5%.
My God, what a leap.
He said, even physiologically there's such a leap between these apparently very nearby species. And he says then we have to think, what is the rest of the brain for? What is the rest of the mind power meant for? And I think that's what Swami is reiterating here, that if you're going to eat and sleep and procreate like the rest of creation, what is the specialty of you being a human being?
Exactly. How do you justify a human birth?
Swami explains the word Bharatya as the letter B in Bharatya for Bhagwan.
Yes.
And Rati.
One who
attachment.
loves.
One who is attached.
So the Bharatyas are those who should remain attached to God. And the Samskriti, which as Swami says is a process of refinement.
Yes.
This Bharatya Samskriti has spirituality as its core. So as you mentioned, the human birth, the residual animal nature, Swami says, the spirituality, the residual animal nature has to be given up so that the human nature can blossom. And then you realize your own innate divinity. So that is the Samskriti, which should be a way of life for man. And he should be after that.
Correct.
Samskriti.
Correct. So he says we should manifest this inherent divinity.
Yes.
And then he goes on to say about the importance of Samskriti, like how every even mundane object in life is actually attaining its value because of the process of refinement which it goes through.
Correct.
The innumerable examples here, Swami is talking of cotton, of paddy,
Yes.
and of something like a watch.
Metal, yeah. And he often mentions gold ornaments as well.
Right.
Unless it's put into fire and actually the goldsmith gives it a beautiful shape.
When I was just listening to this example of the watch which Swami gives, Swami is saying that a piece of steel is worthless, but when it goes through the process of refinement and becomes a watch, it gets value. But just looking at it, even the watch, when it is no more useful as a watch, it again becomes a lump of metal.
Correct.
So I think each one of us is like that. We have to go through the process of purity and samskriti, but then after that, we need to be useful.
Continuously useful
to
the society.
After having reached that state.
Yes.
I think that's what Samskriti is all about.
And Swami is giving the example of these objects.
Right.
And when they are refined, they become more valuable and more useful. So similarly, our mind and thoughts and senses, they also have to go through this process of refinement.
Correct.
So that they can be, used in this world, used in our human life for what we have to, for the purpose, for the correct purpose.
And that's, pretty much what Swami said in the first part when Swami said, don't try to protect the nation.
Correct.
Try to protect righteousness and truth within.
Yes.
It will automatically protect the nation and bring universal harmony.
In this process of refinement, I'm reminded of an example, this purification. Swami says that we put all kinds of things into the mind via the senses, and he describes the senses as the windows of the mind.
Okay.
And he compares the mind to a bucket of dirty water, wherein all kinds of things have been put in. Now, it is not possible to get rid of that dirty water at one go. We can't empty the bucket. So now, what should we do to get pure water in the bucket? So he says, you simply pour pure water into the bucket.
Correct.
And the more purity that goes in, gradually the dirty water will be out. And eventually you will have only the pure water. So for the senses, that is the kind of refinement for human beings, that we put in only purity and monitor what goes in through the five senses.
Yes.
And this is Shankaracharya. He used to have a disciple who used to patrol up and down the ashram all the time, saying Jagrata, Jagrata, Jagrata. Be careful, be careful, be careful. So that this process of refinement would continue.
So I think, shall we go on to the next segment?
We'll play the next clip, which is also about 10 minutes.
Okay.
And let's listen to what Swami has to say.
మానవుడు పరిపూర్ణుడు కావాలనుకుంటే if man has to become and grow into his fullness and perfection, here is an example. ఒక విత్తనం మనం భూమిలో నాటుతున్నాం. We sow a seed into our నాటినటువంటి విత్తనము చిన్నగా రెండు ఆకులతో మొక్క బయలుదేరుతుంది. And this seed becomes a seedling. ఇది క్రమక్రమేణా కొమ్మలు రెమ్మలతో పాటు రూపొందుతుంది. Then it becomes into a small sapling and తదుపరి ఆ యొక్క వృక్షం లోపల ఫలములు మనకు అందిస్తుంది. It gives fruits later on. ఇదే విత్తనం యొక్క పరిపూర్ణత్వం. And this is the fulfillment and growth in the fullness మానవత్వము అనేటువంటిది కేవలము ఒక విత్తనం వంటిది. Human beings may be compared to those seeds. దానిని అనేక రకములుగా మనం సంస్కరింప చేసినప్పుడు అది ఒక విశాలమైనటువంటి ప్రేమతత్వంగా కొమ్మలు రెమ్మలుగా రూపొందుతుంది. Only when we foster this and develop into its fullness, then only it grows into a tree of humanity with all the branches of love. శాంతి భద్రతలన్నిటి ఫలాన్ని కూడాను ఈ యొక్క వృక్షం అందిస్తుంది. This tree also gives the fruits of peace and protection. అది మానవుని యొక్క పరిపూర్ణత. That is the fullness of human ప్రేమ 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 అనబడేటువంటి దైవ గుణమును మానవుని వరకే మాత్రమే మనం పరిమితి గావించరాదు. Love, which is such a divine quality, should not be confined only to a human being. ప్రేమను పశుపక్షి మృగాదుల వరకు కూడా ప్రసరింప చేయాలి. We have to extend our love beyond the human beings and go right up to the animals and birds. ఇలాంటి విశాలత్వమును మనం పెంచుకోవటమే నిజమైన సంస్కృతి. And true culture consists of developing such broad-mindedness. భావాన్ని విస్మరించి giving up that kind of విశాల భావాన్ని అభివృద్ధి పరిచి, we should develop broad-mindedness. తనకు తాను అనుభవించి, he should enjoy himself. 10 మందికి పంచినప్పుడే ఈ మానవత్వము దివ్యత్వంగా మారగలదు. He should be able to distribute the love and fruits of love among 10 others.
then only he can
భారతీయ
become a true human
సంస్కృతియందు
being.
వివరింపజేసినటువంటి వేదములు అద్వేష్ట సర్వభూతానాం, ఎవరిని కూడా మనం ద్వేషించరాదు అనేటువంటిది పవిత్ర బోధన గావించడంలో ఉండేటువంటి అంతరార్థం ఏమిటి?
The inner meaning of the declarations in the Indian scriptures, do not hate anyone. What is the inner significance of it?
కనుక మనము ఈ చదువుతో పాటు భారతీయ సంస్కృతి కూడాను గుర్తించడానికి, దానివల్ల మనం ఆచరించడానికి తగినటువంటి కృషి చేయాలి.
We have to make efforts to learn this education along with it, the true Indian culture, and practice it.
ఈనాటి మానవత్వములో జగత్తు ఏ విధంగా రూపొందినది నీకే తెలుసు.
You know the state in which humanity is suffering today.
మానవుడు వేసే ప్రతి అడుగులను ధర్మం తప్పుతున్నది.
Every step that man is undertaking is going away from righteousness.
ప్రతి పలుకులో కూడా సత్యం సడలిపోతుండాలి.
Every word that he utters is far from truth.
ప్రతి ఆలోచన ఎందుకు కూడా దూరదృష్టి నశించిపోతుండాలి.
Every thought is confined to narrow
ప్రతి
mindedness.
దృష్టి ఎందుకు కూడా ప్రేమ తరిగిపోతుండాలి.
There is no love in his vision,
అభ్యుదయ భావాలు అడుగంటిపోతున్నాయి.
and progressive ideas are not to be seen at all.
ఆధ్యాత్మికం హాస్యాస్పదమైపోతుండాలి.
Spirituality is becoming ridiculous. It is being ridiculed.
కేవలం కులమత ద్వేషాలు అనేటువంటిది పెరిగిపోతున్నాయి.
Hatred between religion, caste and caste
ప్రాంతీయ
is growing.
దురభిమానములు,
Regional chauvinism,
అప్రయోజనమైనటువంటిది వెర్రితలలు వేసి తిరుగుతుండాలి.
selfishness and selfish interest, they are taking extraordinary steps.
మానవుని యందు చైతన్యం చల్లబడిపోతుండాలి.
The consciousness is loosening itself.
ప్రతి సంకల్పం కూడా స్వార్థంగా రూపొందుతుండాలి.
Every thought is filled with selfishness.
దీనికంతా కారణం ఏమిటి?
What is the reason for all this?
కారణాన్ని మనం విచారించడం లేదు.
We are not searching for the reason.
ఈ కేవలం ఈ దృశ్య కల్పితమైనటువంటి యొక్క వివేకములు, అవివేకాన్ని మాత్రమే మనం గుర్తించడానికి ప్రయత్నిస్తున్నాము.
We are only concentrating in trying to understand the external world and the external objects.
పాప భీతి లేని పామరత్వము పట్టి,
We are following the sinful path bereft of the fear of sin.
దైవ ప్రీతి లేని దాని బట్టి,
And we are also giving up love for God.
మానవత్వం అడగే మానవులందున
Therefore, humanity is hidden in human beings.
విశ్వశాంతికి ఏ విప్లవంబు.
And this is responsible for all the revolutionary trends
ఈనాడు
in the world.
విశ్వశాంతి కంటే విప్లవం సంభవిస్తున్నదంటే కారణం ఏమిటి?
If you say today the entire peace of the world is disturbed, what is the cause?
పాప భీతి, దైవ ప్రీతి, సంఘ నీతిని కోల్పోయినాం.
We have given up fear of sin, love for God, and societal morality.
కేవలం మానవుడని ఆకార మానవత్వంతోనే మనం జీవిస్తున్నాము.
We are satisfying ourselves by remaining humans only in form.
ఇట్టి ఆకార మానవుని వల్ల లోకానికి ఏమాత్రం కూడా మంచి చేయలేదు.
Human beings in form alone can never do any good for
ఆచార
the world.
విచార మానవుడిగా రూపొందాలి.
We have to transform ourselves into human beings in our own actions and in our own
ఆచార
thoughts.
విచారములు లేక ఆకార మానవుని వల్ల వచ్చేటువంటి ప్రమాదమే ఈనాడు పరిస్థితి.
It is the great danger which has befallen the society on the account of the humans in form and not in their deeds and not in their
విద్యార్థులారా,
thoughts. They are students.
మీరు చదువుతో పాటు
Along with education,
దేశం యొక్క విశ్వాసమును,
develop faith in our own nation,
దేశ కళ్యాణమును
the welfare of the country.
దృష్టి అందించుకోవాలి.
Keep in your view these two things.
మన ప్రాచీన కాలం నుండి హైందవ సాంప్రదాయము లోక సమస్త సుఖినో భవంతు, అందరూ సుఖంగా ఉండాలనేటువంటిది మన భారతీయుని యొక్క హైందవ సంప్రదాయం.
Our Indian tradition and culture is right from ancient days that everyone should be happy and have welfare.
ఆధ్యాత్మిక సంపత్తి వల్ల
From spiritual
అన్ని
wealth,
దేశములకు సుస్థిరమైనటువంటి శాంతి భద్రత చేకూర్చుతూ వచ్చినటువంటిది భారతదేశం.
Bharatiya country is one which on account of spirituality was able to spread peace and prosperity
భారతీయుల
to the
యొక్క
entire
ప్రధాన
world.
గ్రంథము వేదము.
Veda is the very basis of Bharatiya
ఈ
culture.
వేదము బోధించినటువంటిది మొట్టమొదటి సత్యం వద, ధర్మం చర.
The first lesson,
సత్యమును ఉచ్చరించు, ధర్మమును ఆచరించు.
the first lesson propounded by Veda is speak the truth, follow righteousness.
దురదృష్టవశాత్తు ఈనాడు సత్యమును
కేవలం ఉచ్చరించటమే లేదు.
But today, unfortunately, people do not speak truth at
ధర్మమును
all.
ఉచ్చరిస్తున్నారే కానీ ఆచరించటం లేదు.
They only speak righteousness but do not follow righteousness.
ధర్మమును ఆచరించాలి.
Righteousness has to be followed.
ధర్మో రక్షతి రక్షితః. ధర్మమే మనల్ని రక్షించేటువంటిది.
It is the righteousness which protects the people who follow that.
ఈ ధర్మం అంటే ఏమిటి?
What do you mean by righteousness?
కేవలం మన ఆచారాలు, మన సాంప్రదాయాలు ఇవి మాత్రమే కాదు.
It is not these external habits and traditions.
మనస్సేకం, వచస్సేకం, కర్మణ్ ఏకం. ఇదే మానవుని యొక్క ధర్మం.
The true dharma of man is to bring about unity between his thought, word and deed.
Mankind is man.
The proper study of mankind is man.
ఈ మూడింటిని ఏకత్వం గావించాలి.
There is a need for unifying these three
అప్పుడే
things.
త్రికరణ శుద్ధి ఏర్పడుతుంది.
Then only there will be purity of three instruments
త్రికరణ
of man.
శుద్ధియే మన ధర్మం.
And that trikarana suddhi, purity of three instruments, is our dharma.
ఈనాడు మాటలు ఎందు వేరు, తలంపులు ఎందు వేరు, క్రియలు మరొకటిగా మారుతూ రావటం చేతనే ధర్మము క్షీణించిపోయింది.
Today, righteousness has declined because there is difference between one's thinking, one's talking and one's actions.
కనుక వేద ధర్మము సత్యం వద ధర్మం చెర.
The declaration of Vedas is, speak the truth, follow righteousness.
చెప్పాయి సత్యాన్న ప్రమదవ్యం. ఎలాంటి పరిస్థితులు ఎందైనప్పుడు నీవు సత్యాన్ని వదలవద్దు. ధర్మాన్న ప్రమదవ్యం అనగా ధర్మాన్ని నీవు వదిలిపెట్టవద్దు.
Upanishads have declared that under any trying circumstances, do not give up speaking
ఎలాంటి
truth.
పరిస్థితులు ఎందు ప్రాణాపాయం సంభవించిన సమయం నందు కానీ ధర్మమును మాత్రం మారరాదు.
Even if you have to lose your life and under even such
అది సత్య
circumstances,
హరిశ్చంద్రుడు సాధించినటువంటి వ్రతము.
that is the vow which Sathya Harishchandra has achieved and practiced.
ఇలాంటి పవిత్రమైనటువంటి యొక్క ఉపనిషత్తులు కూడా మానవునికి పలుమారు బోధిస్తూ వచ్చాయి.
Sacred Upanishads have taught great lessons to the man.
That was the powerful clip which, Swami, as you said, quite strong words.
Yeah, but this segment starts off with a very beautiful example of the seed and the tree.
Right.
I mean, so inspiring, because in that simple example, Swami tells everything that needs to be told. And if you think of how the seed germinates and becomes a tree, it needs fostering and protection when it is young, when it's a sapling.
Yes.
But then it gives shade and it gives protection from all natural forces.
Yes.
Isn't that the entire Samskriti, the process of Samskriti is so beautifully explained in that example.
Yeah, I think that is also something which Swami is, rephrased it in a different way, where Swami says that, you follow what is right and wrong till the point where you transcend right and wrong.
Okay.
It is quite similar to what Swami is saying, that, where you talk of discipline as a means of protection, and then where Swami would say about good company. You have to keep company as long as company matters to you.
Correct.
Then after a period of time, you become good company.
Correct.
You don't get influenced by the bad company of others.
Very true. So that process of Samskriti and growth is very beautifully explained. And how does Swami connect that to love? Love is a divine quality in man, but it should be shown not only outward towards other human beings, but also towards which. I think what Swami is saying is that's an important aspect of Samskriti.
I think what Swami is telling is, as you said, there is something special about being human.
Okay.
And that is that he has a divine aspect which he can realize. And then Swami is saying the most obvious manifestation of that divinity is love.
Okay.
He said once that the core or the seed of creation is itself love. I separated myself from myself so that I could love myself.
Yes.
So everybody seeks love, and ultimately it is through that love that you go back and merge in love, the same love which separated itself from itself.
Thinking of that statement, I always used to wonder what was the import of that. I've separated myself from myself to love myself. And suppose I start off from my house and I say I'm going to buy this thing. That is the task I've given myself. So when would I come back to my house? After I complete the task.
Correct.
So here is Swami giving us a clue. He says, I have separated myself from myself to love myself. So I'm not going to come back to myself unless the task of loving myself is done.
Okay.
And so I feel Swami is telling that the secret is when you love everybody as yourself.
Beautiful, but then he extends it beyond human beings.
Right. That's what he's saying, that, to love transcends that duality and that, that diversity in
So it's
physical
an
form.
expansion of love, giving up narrowness and developing broad-mindedness, which results in real joy for oneself and for the society as well. This aspect of Swami's teachings where what is good for you is a priority, but at the same time it should be good for the society as well. Can you think of any situations where somebody thinks this is for my good, but then it doesn't result in the good for society? Something like greed possibly. If a person thinks only of himself and say this is good for me and keeps accumulating wealth, for example, or is very greedy and selfish and is not thinking of the society.
Yes. Swami once said, sealing on desires is civilization.
Okay.
Wow.
So that is the Samskriti process. And as we know, the 5 areas of food and, sometimes we tell the children when we tell them not to waste food, that see God even in a grain of rice.
Correct.
Because all the elements have come together to generate that grain of rice. The earth and the air and the water and, all that. So it is God's hand. You should recognize in the grain of rice and not waste that.
Right. And Swami would tell in many, if you drop a handkerchief and somebody picks it up and gives it to you, you say thank you.
Yes.
Correct.
And here is God who is doing so much for you, and where is the gratitude?
And even knowledge, that is one of them, that it should be used for the benefit of society. And many times today, this craze for name and fame amongst professionals. So knowledge, whatever you have, should be shared for the good of society. Wealth should be used for the good of society, like that. I remember for energy, Swami says talk less.
Yes.
And, don't waste energy. When he used to come out of the interview room, he would be very careful to switch off the light and fan. It was done by Swami himself.
Yes, Auntie.
And even as regards talking, he used to say that limited talk gives limitless joy.
There's a very beautiful couplet which Swami says in Telugu, right? Which is
Ati Bhasha Mati Hani.
Mati Hani. More harmful.
Mita Bhasha Ati Hai. With less talk, you get more joy.
Right.
So it's control of senses, whether it's the sight or the tongue or the hearing. So what you're saying is that when you control the senses, then you're moving towards civilization and sealing on desires.
And on desires. So greed, selfishness. Swami many times says selfishness is the problem for for all evils. Problems of the world today.
That's very true, Auntie, because as I mentioned even last time, I cannot remove that image from my mind, Swami hitting the table, Swarthamu, 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 so much of force. It's really...
I think there's a beautiful connection, Auntie, with what you say, because here you're saying that even a seed in sprouting, draws so much from nature around. So similarly, I think each of us as individuals, even for being what we are today, we have drawn so much from the society around. Yes. So I think it is not only our duty to give back to the society, but even conservation also becomes a means of giving back to the society.
Yes. Swami once spoke about non-violence. In fact, a whole discourse about non-violence. And he said, usually we think that violence is hurting someone, but there's also another subtle aspect. And he said it's not just someone else, but also yourself. Okay. And he said that anything done excessively causes harm, like too much talking, too much eating, even too much listening. He says you should concern yourself with what concerns you and not listen to all and sundry and everything. And, the seed and the tree, the connection.
Yes.
So he says that if you can understand the connection between Prakriti, the vesture of God, nature in which God is omnipresent and the individual encased in the body and God, then you would practice non-violence. You would not hurt anyone because you would be aware of the divinity in all the three.
Correct.
And living extravagantly, you hurt the 5 elements. So this is if you live extravagantly, it's an aspect of violence.
Oh, okay.
And excessively. So it is, you are causing yourself violence and also those around you indirectly.
Actually, today when we were discussing about Swami's childhood,
Yes.
that was one of the points which actually struck us. We were not trying to make that point. It really struck us because when we look at Swami's childhood, he actually showed us how to live with your head held high, even in poverty.
Yes.
You should, even when you don't have enough, how to keep up your family name, how to keep up your own self-respect. But if you contrast it with how Swami lived in the later life, he had all wealth under his command. He just needed to ask. But when you have everything under your command, how simply you live.
Absolutely, really, yes.
So Swami actually showed us both, extremes of how you deal with it. Life.
It's true because I don't know if it fits into the context, but when they had the first press meet with the members of the Central Trust, there was a question asked and one of the trustees very rightly answered, "What are you talking? Swami didn't even have a bank account." I mean,
Yes.
to lead a life, he didn't even have a bank account.
And so as Swami would say, I don't even have pockets in my robe.
Exactly.
Yes, that's
And
right.
he told that even in as Swami says that culture is eating, sleeping and everything. I remember once he was mentioning that he has ragi mudda, that is ragi with groundnut chutney.
Yes.
And that is for 2 reasons. One is it is nutritious and it's very good for health. And secondly, even the poorest man can afford that. I mean, so inspiring. Even when we say ceiling on desires or when you say restraint, how perfect.
And every time you look at all this, it hits you like, when Swami says, my life is my message.
Yes.
It is in no dimension an overstatement. He is
And
actually lived
right
it.
from his childhood.
Correct.
It is not that he set the example at any later stage, but right from his childhood.
And I think another interesting point which Swami made in that clip is, it's very dangerous, these people who are humans only in form.
Correct.
It's not only useless, but it's also dangerous. Those who are in the form of, akara manavodu, Swami says.
Yes.
Those who remain humans only in form.
This Adveshta Sarva Bhutanam that Swami mentioned here, there are discourses where he has just taken this shloka of Bhagavad Gita and given an entire discourse. Adveshta Sarva Bhutanam Maitra Karuna Evacha Nirmamo Nirhankara Samadukha Sukakshame. Samadukha Sukakshame means who is happy in, who is not equal-minded in joy and in sorrow.
Equanimity.
Once he said that the measure of one's spiritual progress is that. If you wonder how much, or are you progressing, or have you progressed, you can measure it by this. That when, the ups and downs, how equal-minded can you be?
That is the definition of a devotee that Swami stated in his letter way back in 1947.
Yes.
To be my devotee, you should be equal-minded.
Somebody observed the whole Bhakti Yoga and Bhagavad Gita doesn't actually tell you how to get devotion.
Correct.
It says what are the qualities of a person who has devotion.
Correct.
In fact, something which keeps repeating, and that is one who is
dear.
Yomat
Bhakta Samek Priya. Yomat Bhakta Samek Priya.
The one who is not affected by the highs and lows of life.
Yes.
And again, Swami is reiterating in this clip the point, that Dharma does not mean just observing traditions. I think that is something which a trap we might all get into. Where you say, we are a traditional family and we are following the Indian culture.
Correct.
And going back to that thing of Swami saying those who are humans only in form, I think it's quite similar to Swami saying people are worshipping actors now.
Correct.
Because what is external is more obvious and it is easy to follow.
Correct.
The hero worship or whatever is happening.
But I sometimes wonder, Swami mentions about King Harishchandra, who had to really go through a lot of trials in his life. I just wonder why only good people suffer always.
No, actually, I had a conversation with one of my teachers.
Okay.
He was telling us the life of one of the Sikh gurus. I think Arjan Dev Singh or something, and he is a person who's really tested.
Okay.
He stands by his words, and a lot of atrocities against him. So he said at one point, Arjan Dev Singh said, I want to show, he had all the powers in the world. He said, I want to show how a person who does not have these powers have to endure this. Okay, and when this teacher told us this in class, one boy asked a very pertinent question, sir, but will this not scare away people from truth? Of course it does show how you have to handle and pursue truth, but will it not scare people away from the path of truth? And very, very instantaneously and without thinking, he said, yes, truth is not for the faint-hearted. And that is why Swami is repeatedly saying here, whatever is the obstacle which comes, whatever is the situation which might, throw you off your feet, but you have to stick to truth and righteousness.
It's all part of the same Samskriti, as we just talked about. The gold has to go through the fire, it has to go through the beating of the goldsmith before it actually becomes an ornament.
In his childhood stories, when narrating, Swami said that somebody asked, why should he, as a little boy, had to go through all these difficulties? And when he was staying with his elder brother, and there's so many stories, incidents narrated. So Swami said that, this is all the play, all the incidents were, went like this. Otherwise, how would I highlight the proper behavior to students? As we said, he would keep up the family name. And, how would I highlight how you should behave?
That's what he says in
if
the
I
Gita.
didn't experience these difficulties.
Absolutely.
So I could show you how to behave under those circumstances.
That's what we were, in a discussion we said, Ramana Maharshi had that deadly disease towards the end of his life. If he had not had it, people would not have valued his words when he said, I'm not this body. And I'm not concerned with this body.
He lived it at that time.
Somebody who was suffering, if he had come to Ramana Maharshi and Ramana Maharshi says, you're not the body, he would have told, what do you know about pain? So, to put that weight behind his teaching, he had to actually undergo that, and I think that's what Swami did in his entire life.
As Krishna says, Name parthasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nana vaptam avaptavyam vartaye vachakarmani. I'm not bound by any action in all the three worlds, but I act so that I can set an example to man.
Yes.
I think we are towards the end of this session. I think it's been a wonderful session, Sai Prakash, and Auntie, so glad that you could be a part of this. It would definitely be an understatement to say that you've enriched this session. Really, we've enjoyed having your experience with us today.
I wish really we can have a telephonic connection from here, and then Auntie can speak from there.
Definitely.
Maybe someday, unlike how Swami says science and technology is being used for distraction, we should use it for bringing out this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Auntie. Thank you so much.
Nothing gives me more pleasure than talking about Swami, talking about his teachings. Charges your batteries.
Yes, Auntie.
Definitely.
Very true.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Auntie. And dear listeners, that brings us to the end of the second episode of Shravanam Mananam Nitidhyasanam. And if you joined us late, we were playing clips from the Discourse, the first Discourse of 1990 summer course. We still have 15-20 minutes of that Discourse to go, which we will continue next week. And till then, this is Prem from Team Radio Sai, and with me is Sai Prakash. We offer our humble pranams at Bhagwan's lotus feet once again, and this humble effort of ours.
Sairam, you just heard an episode of our radio series Shravanam Mananam Nididhyasanam, that is, listen, reflect and absorb. This is a segment that is hosted live on Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. by Radio Sai's Sai Prakash and Prem, only on Asia's stream of Radio Sai Global Harmony. Today's episode was first broadcast live on 25th April 2013, and here Prem and Sai Prakash were joined by Mrs. Fanipanda, a Bal Vikas Guru for more than 4 decades. The discourses undertaken for study in this program are from the series of discourses delivered by Bhagavan as part of the summer course in Indian Culture and Spirituality, 1990. Today, the clips played were from the inaugural discourse delivered on the morning of 20th May, 1990. To listen to the next part of this program, tune in same day, same time, next week. Please do write to us and let us know what you think about this program by writing to listener@radiosai.org. Thank you and Sai Ram from Prashant Nilayam.